This video covers final exam review for the fall for algebra, pages 5 through 8. Problem 22 asks me to write an equation to represent the table of values. Because I have a table, I'm going to plug it into my calculator. In order to plug into my calculator, I'm going to plug this into stat edit exactly like I see it. So I'm pulling up my calculator really quickly to show you the steps on your calculator. So in your calculator, we will click the Stat button and enter. If there's anything in there, you can type over it, or you can scroll up and click Clear to clear it all out. Now, for my table that was on my paper, my x values are 2, 4, 6, and 8. So for each of these, you click Enter between them. My y values were -1, -3, -5, and -7. And remember that you click Enter between each of those entries as well. From here, you click Stat Calc 4, enter, 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 and you get -1 and +1. So my equation is the -1x plus 1, so A goes with x, B follows after. To determine the slope of the line shown, we will count from point to point, so pick 2 points, go from the left one to the right one. From left to right, I will go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I will go right 1, 2, 3, 4. So my slope is a -5/4. Alternatively, you could take those 2 points, pick any 2 points, put all 4 points in, or there's only 3 points, put all 3 points in, and plug that into stat edit and see your equation as well. Problem 24 is asking me to do just that. They are asking me to take these 2 points and find the slope between them. In order to find the slope between them, I can take these 2 points and put them in stat edit and find my equation very quickly. So I'm going to show you those steps again. In our calculator, we click the Stat button right under Delete. Edit. I'm going to come up and clear these out because I have more numbers than I'm going to replace. And then I'm going to replace these with 3 and -1. And then my y values are 7 and -4. Remember that it is important that your x's and y's line up, so your points should go across or be right next to each other. From here, I click Stat Calc 4, enter, 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 and get 2.75 and -1.25. The question was specifically asking me about slope, so that would be 2.75. Or you can retype it and click Math, enter, enter to get the fraction 11/4. 25 asks us to identify the slope and y-intercept and then sketch the graph of the equation. So my slope is whatever number is in front of x. My y-intercept is whatever follows. And remember, y-intercept is written as a point. I go down to -4 on the y-axis. That is my B for beginnings starting point. My slope is 3/5, so I go up 3, right flat 5, and plot a point. Up 3, right 5, and plot a point, and draw my line between the points. Problem 26, they asked me to identify the slope and y-intercept and then sketch the graph. In order to graph, I need y equals, so I need to put it in slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form is y by itself, so I need to solve for y, similar to what we did on the front page. So I move the 4x by doing the opposite operation. Remember that x's and numbers do not mingle, so I just rewrite -4x plus 10. And then divide everything by 2. -4 divided by 2 is -2x, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So my slope is with x, my b value or my y-intercept is 5. So that b value is where I'm going to start. I'm going to start up at 5. My slope is -2, meaning I'm going to go down to right 1. Remember, if there's no bottom fraction, we put it over 1, and because it's negative, we're going down. So down to right 1, down to right 1, just a couple of times, and then draw my line between them. For problem 27, we're going to do the same thing. We have to solve for y first. So I move 3x to the other side. So negative y equals negative 3x plus 5. And then divide everything by negative 1. So with my x's, negative 3 divided by negative 1 is positive 3. 5 divided by negative 1 is negative 5. So my m goes with x. My y-intercept is what follows. So negative 5b means we start down 5 on the y-axis. And then my slope is 3. So I go up 3, right 1, up 3, right 1, up 3, right 1. And then graph my line. Problems 28 and 29 are special cases. This one has one letter, so that's how I know it's a special case. With the y, that would be a hoi, meaning we have a horizontal line when y is negative 5. So I go down to negative 5 on the y-axis and draw a horizontal line. From this line, or from the letter hoi, or the word hoi, I can see that my slope is going to be 0. My y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. Problem 29 is also a special case because it too only has one letter. This would be a vux because there's an x in the special case. I go to where x equals 4 and I draw a vertical line straight up and down. From vux or from my picture, I can see that my slope is undefined and my y-intercept does not exist. There is no y-intercept. For problem 30, they ask me for the equation of the line shown. I always think it's easiest to find b first because b is where it crosses the y-axis. So my b is negative 1. My slope is going to be from point to point. So from this point, I go up 1 and to the right 3. So up 1/3. So my equation is y equals my m times x plus b. And you can put -1 or plus -1. Those are the same thing. The order does not matter there if you did +1 or, if you did -1 or plus -1. 31 asks us to find the rate of change and the y-intercept on this line, meaning I have to solve for y first. So I subtract 5x from both sides, so negative 2y equals negative 5x plus 6. Divide everything by negative 2. And y equals 5/2 x minus 3. So my slope or rate of change is going to be 5/2, and my y-intercept or my b is going to be negative 3. We might also see it as the point 0, negative 3. Both of these are on your test, so you need to remember that b is your y-intercept, or your y-intercept can be written as a point 0 number. 32 tells us that we have a solution, or x comma negative 6 is the solution to the equation, what is the value of x? So they are giving us a y value. What I'm going to do is plug in that y value of negative 6 and solve for x. Alternatively, what you could do is solve your original equation for y, so have y equals, put it into y equals in your calculator, look at your table and see where y is negative 6. So to solve for x, I multiply to get rid of my parentheses, so 3x minus 12 equals 18. I add 12 to both sides, so 3x equals 30. And then divide everything by 3, x equals 10. 33 is similar. They tell me the point 5 comma y is the solution. What is the value of y? So on this one, they are giving me an x value. So this time I'm replacing x with 5. And solving for y. 2 times 5 is 10. Move the 10 to the opposite side through the opposite operation. So negative 4y equals 20. And then divide both sides by negative 4, and y equals negative 5. Again, another option is to solve that equation for y, put it into y equals, and look at your table. When x is 5 in the table, what is y? 34 is asking me for the 0. Remember, the 0 is where it crosses the x-axis. 0 is a fancy word for x-intercept. So the 0 is negative 3, 0, or you could also just see it as the number negative 3. And then the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis down at 0, negative 4. And the last page for this one, we're going to start writing a bunch of equations of lines. So on 35, they asked me to write an equation that has a slope of negative 4 and goes through the point negative 6, 2. So for a lot of these, we're going to need point slope form. Point slope form is y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So in point slope, we replace we leave anything that's an x or a y. Just an x or a y though. We replace anything with a 1 or an m. So my m is my slope of negative 4. My point is x1, y1. And remember, when you plug in your point, you change your sign. So I plug in x1 and it becomes a positive 6. I plug in y1 and it becomes a negative 2. That is because we have the negative signs or the change your sign signs on our original equation. From here, to turn it into slope-intercept form, I distribute negative 4 times x, negative 4 times 6, leave the left side the same. And then add 2 to both sides, only to the numbers. So my slope of negative 4x stays the same. And then my y-intercept is negative 22. So you can rewrite it over here if you want. Please remember, whatever slope you start out with is the slope you should end up with. Even though these are two different ways to write the equations, starting in point slope and ending in slope-intercept form, my slope should not change. Problem 36, if it goes through 2 points, we're going to use stat edit. So 2, 7, negative 4, 4. So this is what we talked about earlier in the calculator. So for my calculator, I click stat enter. I need a 2 and a negative 4. And then in my y's, I need a 7 and a 4. I click stat calc 4, enter, enter, enter. And I get 1/2 and 6. So my equation is 1/2 x plus 6. Remember, the order in which they pop out on your calculator is the order which you put them in, M first, then B. An x-intercept means I have the point 2, 0. Y-intercept means I have the point 0, 3. And again, I have 2 points. So I can put 2, 0, and 0, 3 into stat edit. So 2, 0, and 0, 3. 2, 0, 0, 3. Remember, you do have to line them up horizontally. Stat calc 4, enter, 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 enter. And we get negative 1.5 and 3. Before I get off this, I want to remind you, you can retype negative 1.5 math, enter, enter to turn it into a fraction. So if we want to leave it as a fraction, we have negative 3/2 x plus 3. 38, similar situation, y-intercept, x-intercept. So we plug them into stat edit. So we have 6, 0, and 0, negative 4. Stat calc 4, enter, 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 enter. And then the 0.6 repeating. Math, enter, enter, is 2/3. So our equation, y equals 2/3 x minus 4. The next couple are going to be by hand or in our head, not really with the calculator. So 39 says we have a y-intercept of negative 12 and a rate of change of negative 6. So we're given a b value and an m value. In order to plug into y equals mx plus b, I need m and b. So if I have m and b, then I'm done. You could also write this negative 6x minus 12. Again, if you do plus negative 12 or minus 12, those are the same thing. 4D wants something that is parallel to 5/3 x plus 2 and goes through the point negative 6, negative 3. So parallel means we steal the slope and we are done with that line. Now I have a point, x1, y1, so because I have a point and a slope, I am going to plug into point slope. Y opposite of my y point equals m times x opposite sign of my x point. Now they don't really tell us that we need to change this, so we could leave this as is. Y plus 3 equals 5/3 x plus 6. If you do solve it by hand, you should get that. 41 wants something perpendicular. So perpendicular means we have the complete flopposite or flipped opposite slope. And it's going to go through this point 12, negative 5. So y opposite of my y point equals m x opposite of my x point. Again, they did not tell us that we need to convert it, so we can put that as our answer. Or if you've already done it by hand, you should get negative 1/6 x minus 7. But again, they did not tell us we had to solve further, so that's where we can stop on those problems.